All right, everyone, welcome to our second webinar of the year, Enabling Sales with Actionable Competitive Intelligence at Scale. Today, we're joined by Justin Topliff, who ran a workshop similar to this with a couple other presenters at Skip a couple months ago in November, and it had really, really good feedback from product marketers and CI folks alike. So we're really excited that Justin's agreed to join us and kind of share his insights as well with us. So I will get to some of the housekeeping stuff right away. We'll send you the recording. So if you have to leave early or some technical difficulties on your end, we will be sending out the recording. It'll be in your inbox a few hours after the webinar is done. And also feel free to submit your questions at any time. There is a chat box and a Q&A box. You can use either. Q&A is easier for me to just kind of source them. We will have a Q&A period at the end, 15, 20 minutes or so. But if there is something that's relevant to Justin's slide he's on or the part of the presentation he's at, and it doesn't derail things too much, I can kind of sprinkle in some questions throughout as well. So can we just get a couple people posting in the chat box just so I know everything's good on our end and that we aren't experiencing the technical difficulties of Zoom? Awesome. David, good morning, everyone. Awesome. Okay, so great. Yep, submit your questions in the Q&A, any comments in the chat box, and we just, that's all good. Let's get to our presenter, Justin. So Justin is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at HighSpot. And if you've been living under a rock, you might not know that HighSpot recently got their Series E funding, which was that's pretty big news, I'd say, right, Justin? That's fairly big news.
Pretty big round too.
And so today we get to have the man that runs the competitive program at a company that's now evaluated at what is the number now?
2.3 billion.
That's it. That's a big number. So we get to hear from Justin, get his expertise on this, and also it's going to be really good because HighSpot being this high growth company, that how he really scaled a program from when they were just starting out to where they are now. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Justin.
Thanks, Adam. And hello, everyone. Excited to be here today and talking with you about the 4 things that we see here. So competitive enablement is something that has become near and dear to my heart. It's always been near and dear as a product marketer, but especially at HighSpot, things have really heated up, and it's been a journey for us. So today I wanted to talk about competitive enablement and touch on why you need to make sure that you're enabling your sales team first, and then how you can apply CI tech to help you scale your program, building a business case so that you can convince your boss to let you buy some CI tech, and then answer any questions that you may have. So if we go to the next slide, like Adam mentioned, I'm a product marketer, which means that I sit at the intersection of all the teams that you see here and am no stranger to their onslaught of questions and needs. It also means that I've mastered the balancing act of diplomacy to manage stakeholder expectations, have empathy for my customers, both internal and external, a sense of ownership around the business's success, and also a healthy love of red wine. And I love product marketing because it's a global role. So while we sit at the intersection and work most frequently with the teams that you see here, we also work with every other team in the business to deliver on objectives. And we're entrusted with some of the business's most urgent and pervasive problems. And 2 of those largest problems that I want to talk about today are sales enablement and competitive intelligence. But before we do, I think it's important to acknowledge a few things. The first is that at many companies, especially expansion and growth stage companies, product marketing is often a one-person show. And despite a broad set of responsibilities that includes go-to-market strategy, with GTM evading a clear definition across organizations, sales enablement, voice of the customer, product launches, and collateral building, competitive intelligence also gets thrown into this catch-all PMM bucket. And while this is okay, and I trust nobody more than a product marketer to handle CI, I think it begs the question of how to satisfy the demands of your sales team and enable them effectively to compete amongst all of your other responsibilities. But before we dive into CI, let's talk about one of the main tenets of product marketing, which is sales enablement. On the next slide. So a lot of us complain about the labor of love and the amount of time and effort that we invest into enabling our sales teams, but there's good reason for it. Our sales teams are the path of least resistance to value for the business as a whole and the way that you can see the fastest results. And this is what we live and breathe at HighSpot, to accelerate your revenue strategy by enabling your customer-facing teams and making sure that they make every conversation count. But to make this happen, we need to solve some pervasive challenges around sales enablement. The first problem to solve is getting your content problem under control. And you need a scalable way to manage, organize, and discover content. But that by itself is not enough. You also need guidance wrapped around that content in the form of sales plays and communications, so sellers know in every situation what they need to know, say, show, and do when interacting with customers so that they can have the most effective conversation possible. And if you want to transform the capabilities of your customer-facing teams and achieve business outcomes, you're going to need to onboard and train reps so that they're equipped for every conversation. But we also know that that initial training isn't enough. So the ability to coach reps to repeatable success by amplifying best practices and steering them towards consistent results is also important through ongoing coaching. And then finally, exceeding buyer expectations by creating engaging experiences that they can share with buyers that are personalized for every prospect, wherever they are in the sales cycle, are also critical for teams to make sure that they're personalizing their communications. But one aspect of sales enablement that isn't as well recognized is competitive enablement. And at my company, and I'm sure many of yours, more than 4 out of 5 of our deals are competitive. And we don't have the luxury of selling into a blue ocean anymore. And I'd argue that almost nobody does. But you can teach your reps how to perfect their pitch until they're blue in the face. But unless you also teach them how to sell against the competition, your reps aren't going to succeed. So today, competitive intelligence must be top of mind alongside of your sales enablement efforts. And hopefully it's no secret to this group that your sales team is arguably the hungriest group out there when it comes to CI. And they're also the ones who are going to suffer the most if they're not supported, which in turn means that your business results are going to be at risk. And while a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with our sales teams at times, it's important to recognize that they are truly our most important ally when it comes to CI, because they're the ones out in the trenches having conversations with customers in the market, while there's one, or maybe if you're fortunate, a few of us CI folks back at the office trying our hardest to get a pulse on everything and stay one step ahead. And I also want to acknowledge that this is hard. This is a hard problem to solve. Sales enablement is hard. Competitive intelligence is hard. Joining the two together is even more difficult. But today's CI technology can help you join your CI with your sales enablement and fully enable your sales teams to achieve your business goals. And that's what I would like to talk about today, and also how we can do it at scale. So on the next slide, like I mentioned previously, and I imagine many of you are navigating, competitive intelligence is likely a portion of your responsibilities, and whether you're a product marketer or in a different role. And this is exhausting. And I stand by you in solidarity, especially as your company grows. The competitive landscape intensifies. You expand into new markets and therefore have new competitors, or your list of inbound requests grows. And those feelings of helplessness start to creep in as you feel yourself getting weighed down and unable to deliver on all of the asks that are coming across your desk. But fear not. As you've seen, there are CI tools out there that can alleviate some of this burden. And I'm not talking about Google Alerts or about the table stakes benefits like saving time, not missing any competitive news, consolidating all of your intelligence into a searchable database. I'm talking about the real problems that you probably haven't recognized that you have because you're in so much pain that you can't think that far ahead. So if we click through the transition, I'm talking about things like satisfying a higher ratio of inbound requests for help from your reps, not just 5 out of the 100 that you get every day. I'm talking about rolling up your sleeves and fighting in the trenches in a competitive deal alongside of your reps. I'm talking about having the headspace to create competitive assets and maintain the ones that you already have. or opportunities like being more strategic and collaborating across boundaries on integrated compete initiatives. Other things like spending more time with your customers, learning about all of their needs and what your competitors are telling them. Analyzing data so that you can become a more strategic program instead of just a tactical order taker. And improving CI communication company-wide so that everyone at your company can see the impact that you're having on the business. These are the real reasons that you should be investing in CI tech, not just so that you can have time or spend more time gathering intelligence or get your morning feed of happenings. And to drive this home, let's think about what you could do if some of your tasks suddenly became automated or easier thanks to CI tech. On the next slide. So what if your reps could find answers to their most frequently asked questions because you had a wider internal footprint and a more organized repository of competitive intelligence, which gave you, your CI itself, and your CI program better scale and visibility across the company? What if you were able to achieve higher sales trust because you found more engaging and efficient ways to collect intel from the field, essentially cloning yourself and giving you the ability to be present in more than one place or customer conversation at once? And as a result of that, you regularly obtained a higher quantity and quality of intel for not just your sales reps, but your executives and strategy teams, so that your long-term product and company strategies continue to outmaneuver that of the competition. And what if your customers trusted you more from each of your reps being more consultative sellers in your industry because they knew at any given time more about why and specifically how your solution is better than the competition? And you're able to achieve a higher win rate faster with less friction and a shorter average deal cycle. And you're able to propel your company's growth even 20% above plan. That, my friends, is the true value of CI tech alongside a strong sales enablement methodology and tooling. And this is not about just giving you your morning newspaper of competitive happenings. It's important to think beyond that. So next slide. While all of this sounds great, and we'll get to building your business case for a CI tool investment in a few slides, I want to call out that tech and AI isn't going to solve for all of your CI needs. So AI is all the rage in just about every technology right now, and more recently in CI solutions. And AI is great. It can automate a lot of the pieces of your CI workflow that will free up time for higher value activities. So it can do things like collecting intel from a myriad of external and internal resources. And that's particularly helpful in sourcing intel from the field via integrations where your reps live, namely your web browser, productivity platforms, your CRM, and messaging tools like Slack. AI also can sift through a lot of this collected intel to tell you which pieces you should be paying attention to versus what's noise. And that's important because I don't want to spend hours every day sifting through hundreds of alerts. I only want the right ones that machine learning may have surfaced for me that constantly improve over time. And AI can also do things like automate the distribution of baseline news and assets to broader teams at your company. So whether that's a weekly compete digest over email that are already 90% built for me, so I just have to add my 2 cents at the top and a few comments throughout that gets sent every Friday, that saves me a lot of time. And this minutiae becomes a lot less tedious and more valuable when it's automated. But let's talk about where AI and tech doesn't belong on the next slide. So raise your hand if you have ever interacted with a chatbot recently. Yes, lots of hand raises. So case in point with the chatbot, right? It's close, but no cigar. So I pose the question to you all: how many of you would be comfortable having AI do things like dictate your CI priorities and roadmap without asking your thoughts? What about deducing insights from CI gathered and automatically updating your sales plays? Or crafting messaging in response to your competitor's latest product update without the contextual knowledge that lives in your head? Or things like discerning whether or not your competitor's April Fool's ad is fact or fiction? Or telling your sales reps how to do their job and exactly what to say beyond thematic suggestions. So my point is that you still need a human for this, and all of us should rest easy. All of us will still have our jobs as CI professionals. And on the next slide, another point that I want to drive home is that CI tech benefits more than just your sales team. So if any of you are like me, operating in a landscape that went from 12 to about 256 or more competitors over the past 3 years, after being named a must-have by analysts and seeing billions of dollars of investment fly into the space, yes, your sales team may see benefit in accessing battle cards that are always up to date, but perhaps you as the sole product marketer overseeing CI are the real benefactor, because you're able to do all of those things that you see in the left-hand column thanks to CI tech automating the low-value activities. And the other side of the coin, of course, is that everybody in the right-hand column benefiting from your hard work and the helping hands of your tools. And I say this because it's important to think holistically when you're building your business case and thinking beyond just you and your role or that of your main stakeholder. It's important to be thinking about the rest of the business at large. So on the next slide, great. Hopefully by this point, I've convinced you that you can't do it alone and you need some sales enablement and competitive intelligence tooling. That begs the question of where on earth do you start and what should you be looking for? First and foremost, I would think about solving your intel collection and content problem first. After you think about your collection problem, think about governance. So how can you manage your content or the feed and the tool as it grows over time through AI and machine learning? Maybe that will help you. Maybe it'll do a better job of recommending the right content to you and your stakeholders. Now let's talk about content findability and guidance. So is the tool surfacing the right information at the right time to your reps so that they can have the most productive customer conversations possible? Are you able to display that information in a way where there's enough guidance around it so that your reps know how to actually use it? And is AI helping you surface or recommend content based off of its efficacy or parameters of the deal that they're working, like stage, competitor presence, or even peer ratings from users like them? Ask yourself, is the tool easy to use? Is it easy to administer? And we found at HighSpot that those two things are critical to adoption and ROI. So at the end of the day, if the tool is not easy to use or easy to administer, nobody's going to use it and your project will fail. You will literally have lit tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on fire, and you're going to have to start all over again. And there's also the opportunity cost of time, not just dollars. So now you're a year behind where you wanted to be because you selected the wrong tool. So think about how fast you can get that tool rolled out and what your time to ROI payback is going to be.
Justin, Justin, we actually, just as you're speaking there, we had a question relevant to that. And I think it's an interesting question too, is like, how do you introduce new tech that isn't the CRM that salespeople are comfortable in? Like, is there something that you do on your end, like tactically, to really get salespeople to feel more comfortable adopting that new tech?
Yeah, totally. I would say that one of the most important things that you need to look at after you check all of those other boxes is, will this tool, whether it's a sales enablement tool or a CI tool, integrate well, not just with each other, but also all of the other tools that your reps are already using. So it's really important to think about your reps' workflow and to respect the fact that they don't enjoy having that workflow disrupted, just like all of us don't like having our workflows disrupted. So finding a tool that integrates well with each other, that works nicely, that is as frictionless and as possible, or provides as seamless of an experience as possible, is really important. And all of us have probably worked with sales teams or watched your revenue teams implement different tools with sales teams, whether that's Gong or Clary or all of these things that in theory help sellers sell, or in particular, sales managers do a better job of managing your sales teams. I think when it comes to sales enablement tools and competitive intelligence tools, we have a bit of a luxury in that these tools provide so much value to your sellers that I was surprised when we started socializing and rolling out our CI tooling at how receptive they were to receiving all of the additional value that it was providing them. But I absolutely agree that it's really important to keep your seller experience in mind and to select tooling that fits well within that and plays nice with the other systems that they're using. Thanks, Adam. So yeah, all of these are critical considerations for both sales enablement and CI tools. If we go to the next slide and off of that last question, one of the things that we found at HighSpot is that meeting your sellers where they are and making sure that integrating with their current workflows and tools so that they don't have to navigate away from what they're doing to accomplish tasks or get insights is critical for adoption. And we do this incredibly well with our 70+ deep integrations. That number has probably surpassed 100 by now, but I'm proud to say that we focus on quality over quantity. But wherever a rep is, they can access HighSpot without navigating away from what they're doing. So if they're on their laptop, on their phone, their tablet in the airport, or if they're inside of Salesforce or Slack or in Microsoft Teams or in an internet browser, they're able to get what they need and to access the tool. So your CI tool should be no different. It should live where your reps are living. And for us, that means primarily in HighSpot, which you can see here. So it's important to select a sales enablement tool that can ingest artifacts from your CI tool, whether that is entire boards, battle cards, individual cards, and to make them available for your reps as an entire piece of content like you see here, or as content in context, like a portion of this battle card or just 3 of the cards regarding a specific topic that you can surface on a sales play that lives on a smart page next to the brochure that they should be sending to the prospect, and maybe also with a video recording. So that is emulating one of your top reps delivering those talk tracks to a customer. So the real value is having everything in one place and creating the best experience possible for your reps. So let's talk about some strategies and best practices. So the best way to think about your CI program, just like your sales enablement program, is an evolution and in terms of the maturity model. So when I showed up at HighSpot, we didn't have a whole lot for CI. We had some battle cards that somebody authored that hadn't been updated in 6 or 7 months. We didn't have any competitor profiles. A lot of stuff was out of date. It was also a simpler time for us. And originally, compete was only supposed to be a third of my job. But then the market heated up. And now running CI is 100% of my job, alongside the other 50%, like managing product launches and other things that hasn't gone away. So tools tend to be less expensive than headcount. And regardless of other factors, a key foundational element of scaling your CI function is this tooling. So when you're thinking about starting your business case, it's important to illustrate a gap. So especially if you're a one-person show, showing where you are, where the promised land is that you want your CI program to be, and illustrating the gap between those two things paints the investment in a more urgent light. And some questions to ask that you may want to, or that you may want to create, include: do you have executive sponsorship and therefore visibility to your executive team? Is your vision, mission, or charter document for your CI program widely published? Do you have a CI code of conduct that is also widely published and adhered to? Are roles and responsibilities for your direct CI team and your partners, like your sales reps, defined, published, and understood across all those teams? Have you defined your KPIs and metrics? And are you measuring those consistently? Or have you thought about or thought through technology and process and standardize that where able, and thought about how your tooling needs to evolve over time and scale with your CI program? And the last question I would ask is, what does your CI roadmap look like? Have you identified the gaps or the projects that are most pervasive and urgent, along with the 1 or 2 big rocks per quarter, in addition to ongoing maintenance that you want to tackle? So the other thing I'll say is that fear of missing out is real. And if you're able to frame and quantify all of the things that you can't get to yet because you don't have the right tooling, that makes it a little bit easier to justify the investment. And another thing to illustrate might be gaps against your competitor CI program investment. So take a look at headcount. Do they have anyone with CI in their LinkedIn title? Do they have more than one? Do they have a head of CI with a team? Take a look at their tooling. If they're investing in more powerful tooling, you should acknowledge that as you're building your business case. Or are they contracting out win-loss interviews or paying for research studies that are going to give them more CI faster than you're getting? So think through all of these things that you can illustrate. And if we go to the next slide, once you've identified where you stand in the CI maturity model and the things that you're not doing yet, further build urgency by calling out the business metrics that you are unable to impact because you're lacking that investment. So I read a recent study somewhere that said 3 in 4 companies with CI programs see an increase in revenue as a result of CI efforts. So other things to call out might be, hey, I can get my sales reps ramped faster. I can shorten deal cycles. I can get us to the point where we're competing so effectively that we don't have to discount as heavily in deals. I can improve retention rates. I can increase our trust with customers. All of these things are also important to call out, even though they might be a little more qualitative or quantitative. And a lot of these things can be found in your annual plan. So don't forget that different departments, not just sales, care about a lot of these metrics. So if you can get them on board, the more areas of the business that you can point to and say that you'll benefit with CI investment, the better your business case is going to be.
Justin, we had a question too, specifically when you're talking about these KPIs and metrics for kind of building this case. Is there something you would point to specifically for an early stage developing program that's at like point, like at that like first point that you mentioned there?
Yeah, I would say the step from 0 to 1 is a big one. So if you can point to the fact that, you know, hey, we don't have anything, we don't have a way to monitor our competitors, we don't have a good look or a good or battle card even, you know, we don't have a competitor profile, we don't have a battle card, our sales team literally has nothing as they're competing out of the market against deals. I would hope that leadership at your company would say, okay, we need to start thinking about building something. And when you find yourself at that starting grid, I think it's important to build with the end in mind, or to plan with the end in mind. And your company is going to grow. So the question that you should be asking is, you know, whatever we decide we're going to go with today, is that going to be enough in 6 months' time, in 1 year's time, in 3 or 5 years? And as your sales team grows, as the market expands, as the number of competitors increases, think about whether or not a Google Doc is going to be able to handle it, or if you're going to need some additional tooling. All right. So with all of this in mind, yeah, let's go to this business case slide here. So once you've thought through all of this, it's important to break it down and make it real for your boss. So again, keep in mind that tooling often costs less than headcount and is also your best foundation for scalability. So try and organize all of your points in a way and quantify them so that it makes it really easy for people to understand. So there are benefits to be had from simply finding and collecting intel, right? So maybe you can back into a number that says, you know, I spend 20 minutes per day gathering, you know, intelligence, or look at all of this intelligence that I've manually gathered over the past 30 days. If I had a tool that did all of that for me automatically, that would result in X time savings per week. After you collect intel, you're going to have to organize and curate it. So try and back into some math there, saying, okay, you know, I spent 10 hours last week creating or updating battle cards. Wouldn't it be nice if a system helped me do that faster, or did a large part of that for me? And you can illustrate some time savings there, or back into some dollar savings as well with the amount of time that you've spent. There's also something to be said for having an insurance policy, right? If you can't spend all day crawling the internet, and even if you do, chances are you're going to miss something. Maybe a big competitor announcement that you otherwise would not have seen if some automated system or tool wasn't out there crawling it and finding those things for you. And then think about how much time you spend with your reps, right? Gathering intel from your reps is also a significant time investment for a lot of us. wouldn't it be nice if there was a tool that reps could submit that intel to and save you doing laps on the sales floor, even though you should keep doing that. But again, seeing efficiency gains there, saving time. Time is money. So if you start adding all of this up and then illustrating how you could take all of the time savings that a tool is providing you and pointing out where you could allocate that additional time, like the higher impact activities that you see here in the green column, the business case starts to become pretty compelling. So building your business case is the first step. If we go to the next slide, once you've built out that business case, it's important to build out roles and responsibilities for your team of one initially, and also thinking through the future. So this is incredibly important to think about if you want to scale your CI team from an ad hoc, project-based, reactive, tactical kind of machine, which is necessary in the way that a lot of us start out, but to the measurement and data-led program that you want it to become. And similar to product marketing, CI is a fast evolving discipline, and especially in certain industries, but for many companies, it remains a one-person show. So you already know what you need to do as a CI professional, but if you want to set yourself up for future success and avoid the trap of falling into that project-based CI program, think about the role of your stakeholders and contributors and your future team first. Start with that end in mind. So by framing your thinking for growth, you're increasing your chances of your CI program, evolving into what it should be, a key part of the command center for the entire org, not just your sales team. And the next slide, finally, root your definition of success in data. So think about all of the metrics and KPIs that you want to track from the start. And it's okay if you don't have all of these when you start. To the question that we answered, the 0 to 1 is a great KPI, but thinking ahead, think about things like the number of requests and calls and stuff that's going to come across your desk, the number of shoulder taps that you can solve for. Think about how people are going to be leveraging your content. If you can attribute your content and CI investments to moving the needle on revenue objectives. And it's going to take time to get here, to the point where you can actually measure your impact on revenue. But think through, some of these other things. So for those earlier stage companies, stuff on the left is great, but make sure that you're paying attention to all the things that we see on the right-hand part of the slide here. So that brings us back to where we started. So today I was hoping to give you, some insight into how you should be thinking about sales enablement and competitive enablement and how those two are very closely related. I hope we did that with number one. Number two, there's something to be said for making some tooling investments. So whether that's starting small and growing that over time, I hope we gave you an idea of what that looks like and the benefits to you and the rest of your business as a whole. I hope in number three, we were able to show you how to think about and build out a business case so that you can make the case for get the investment in CI tooling. And then I also hope that we talked through in number four, ways to make sure that you're growing and evangelizing your CI program and making sure that the company sees all of the benefit from the really hard work that it takes for all of us CI owners in building, running, and scaling these programs. So I believe that brings us to Q&A.
It's question time. And we had a couple trickling in, but I didn't want to kind of derail the presentation too much. But one of the really interesting ones I think that came up as you're talking about proving the ROI is obviously a big obstacle or challenge for product marketers and CI folks is that end user adoption, sales user adoption. And what have you learned in your experience on how to really get sales to adopt using the technology at hand to kind of help build your case too?
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I called out because it's really important to think about that from the start. And ultimately, I strongly believe that the crux of it is ease of use and ease of administration. So if the tool, even for you, I mean, being selfish and thinking about your own needs, if whatever tool you buy isn't easy for you to get up and running, get implemented and rolled out and to maintain over time, and you hate logging into it and using it every day, you're not going to make the investments that you need to even keep everything up to date in there that people are consuming. And that's a problem for them, because if they can't find what they need, or they're not getting what they need because you can't even do your job at administering the tool, then they're not going to use it. But on the flip side, also for your end users, if the tool isn't easy to use, if it doesn't integrate into their existing workflows smoothly, if they're having to navigate away from what they're doing constantly to find what they need, or it's just not providing enough value, they're not going to use it. And I think a lot of software companies are the ones who have built tools that succeed. The tools are easy to use and they provide a lot of value to customers. We have a lot of HighSpot customers who have switched to us from competing solutions because the competing solutions just weren't easy to use. And it was such a barrier to initial rollout, to ongoing usage, that reps just weren't using the tool. And that's kind of an awkward conversation or position for you to be in as a solution owner as well, is you having to throw whatever tool that you bought into the trash can, or just call it, because nobody is using it. And then there's the time and opportunity cost and dollar opportunity cost there. So I strongly believe that ease of use is a huge consideration that should not be overlooked.
Absolutely. And also on the other side of the coin as well, like in terms of them contribute, because as you said, like the intel that salespeople are getting from the field is arguably some of the most valuable competitive content you can get. Is there, not only in the ease of use for them to get the battle cards they need, but also in terms of being able to contribute the competitive intel, is there something beyond just ease of use as well to get them to buy into that culture that what they're providing is going to be really valuable for the team in the long run as well?
Yeah, I think thanks for reminding me about the culture point. One tenet that I've instilled at HighSpot is that compete is a team sport. And even if you have tooling, or you're fortunate enough to get some additional headcount to work on your CI program, we still can't be everywhere at once. And there is so much of those nuggets that your teams are encountering out in the field because they're out in the trenches. So having a bidirectional flow or bidirectional value in these tools is something that you should consider as well. So can whatever tool that you're using for sales or competitive enablement also ingest feedback or content or competitive intelligence from the field easily? That provides huge value to you as a solution owner, but it also makes it a lot more engaging for your reps. And if you can get your reps to the point where they feel like they're helping out and they're helping you grow and scale the CI program and making it more effective, that only benefits them at the end of the day. So that's definitely an area that I would look for as well when you're evaluating tools.
In your experience as well, how do the best salespeople use compete materials? Is it different? Is there something that that differs with the majority, or is it kind of a case-by-case basis?
That's a great question. When I think about it, my best reps, they tell me when something is out of date on something that I've created, or going back to the point around engagement, they're engaging with the content. They're not just viewing it. Maybe they're leaving a review on the content and whatever tool that I'm using. Maybe they are commenting back and forth with suggestions, or, hey, I heard this, or, this argument that we had is no longer valid because they released a new product feature that we didn't know about, but a prospect just told me about. So the reps who do really well are the ones who are engaging most with the content. And I know that's a simple answer, but I think us as marketers and product marketers especially, a lot of our job is content. And it's also strategy, and plenty of other things that we want to be focusing on. But we push a lot of content to sales teams. And I think having a tool that can show you how your audience is interacting with that content is really important. And a lot of sales enablement tools do that. A lot of CI tools also will show you how reps are interacting with your competitive intelligence content that lives in that CI tool or in your sales enablement tool via that CI tool. So keeping an eye on engagement numbers is really important. But yeah, the most successful reps are engaging with the content beyond just viewing it.
We have a question actually, which is interesting, related to HighSpot. So you mentioned that Clue's integrated with HighSpot, and one of the attendees said, "Great, because we use HighSpot." How does that integration feel to the sellers from a user experience side who are using HighSpot?
Yeah, so HighSpot, we can iframe in Clue. So it can live as a link in our platform. It can live on a smart page. You can import battle cards into HighSpot. You can iframe battle cards into HighSpot. You can iframe individual cards onto smart pages. You can store things as links in the platform. So that's our current state of the integration. And for HighSpot customers, you're more than welcome to reach out to your services reps or account managers, and we'd be happy to show you how to do that.
I also have another one here, and it's talking about sharing CI with various audiences. So not just sales, but with the CSMs, specifically a product leadership team. How do you do that in a easily digestible format?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad we called it out. So while we talked about today that your sales team is generally thought of as the primary internal customer of CI, right? Because that's where the most competition takes place, is in pre-sale when you're trying to close the deal initially. I also think it's important for you to make sure that you're servicing your post-sale folks as well. So, we all know that companies switch solutions for various reasons, or that your competitors are probably trying to come after your existing customers and get them to switch. So making sure that you have tailored materials for post-sale is really important as well. And that can be as simple as swapping out some cards on a battle card, or you can clone a battle card that you have for pre-sales, remove the content that is not as relevant for your post-sale folks. Maybe you create additional cards on things like, during implementation, make sure that we're landing these three things that are big differentiators for us, or make sure that we're highlighting XYZ that are areas where we do better than the competition, perhaps for ease of use. So making sure that you have tailored items, and you don't have to overthink it. Don't overthink it would be my advice there. It could be as simple as just cutting out 3 of the cards and replacing them with 3 new cards as you learn more. But also having a rhythm, if you own your CI program at your company, having a rhythm with your folks, like the account managers or your implementation folks, is also really important, because they hear all the time from customers who have switched from other solutions or have used them in the past. And those customers are constantly dropping nuggets. So there's a lot of intelligence that lives with your post-sale teams as well that you want to make sure that you're capturing.
That's a good point, actually, that personalization aspect a little bit with specific teams. One of the things from our a recent report we ran is one of the biggest difficulties that end users face is finding intel not relevant to their specific role or how they can apply it. So that's actually a really good point you bring up there. We also have, we got some really flooding in here. Let me pick a good one. How long did it take for sales teams to adopt CI and really embrace that kind of competitive culture you talked about?
Pretty quickly, I would say, in the sense that when I showed up, we didn't have a lot of things, so they were hungry for value. They were in deals competing against our competitors, and they were using a battle card that hadn't been updated in 7 months. So that was my first area of focus. And once I just made a pass on the battle card, it was, oh my God, this is great, and thank you so much. Can we have more? So we started seeing value immediately, and that was before we introduced any sort of tooling. And we're in the process of rolling out additional tooling now, and the early reception that we've got is the hunger is still there, and despite it being as an additional tool, we're able to make it accessible really seamlessly through HighSpot. People are hungry for it. And going back to what I said about, your sales teams get a lot of tools thrown at them that are meant to help them sell, but at the end of the day are really meant to help them be managed. When you introduce tooling that is providing value directly to them, especially in regards to competing, since, and I would say arguably every deal is competitive, right? Even if, 4 out of 5 deals you're competing against a named competitor, the other 1 out of 5 is the status quo. Closing out an op with no decision is also a tier 1 competitor. And I think that's really important. That's a big mindset shift that a lot of us need to adopt, and one that we just have neglected because we're so focused on the head-to-head compete. Like competing against the status quo is also a tier 1.
And that's definitely something on the CS side we hear a lot as well, on that retention side of the status quo being is a significant competitor too. So that's a good point. And actually, speaking to your kind of first slide, that fastest path to revenue impact when you're enabling sales and they're the hungriest for CI, I think you really kind of make a good point in terms of it's a quick, if you have no battle cards and they have no content, like it's the quickest way to kind of prove your value and in turn kind of that building that business case. Another one here, let's have a look. See, we've got, how many competitors would you say you need before you consider getting a tech solution to help with competitive?
That's a good question, and it's also an it depends answer. I would say, going back to your business case and what we just talked about how quickly can you roll out value to your teams. You may work in spaces where it's pretty easy to differentiate against competitors, or you may work in a commoditized or really crowded space where it's a lot more difficult to differentiate yourselves, and therefore it may take you varying amounts of time to build battle cards. Right? If it's a nascent industry, you can probably throw together a battle card in an hour, or a couple hours. But for more crowded spaces, it may take you a week to author a really good battle card. So if you think about delivering ongoing value quickly to your sales teams, if you find yourself in a position, or you find yourself weighed down with manual tasks, and you have to spend a lot of time crawling the web or talking with reps to really understand things, because your reps have no way to really submit intel or comment back and forth on the battle card because you don't have any tooling in place. If you think through the amount of time that you would save, whether that's helping you author battle cards faster because half of the battle card is automated by a tool that constantly updates things like company profile stuff, like employees and product lines and all that kind of stuff, or gathers all of the most recent blog post press releases so that you don't have to do that. There's time savings there. There's stuff that you can quantify with, hey, yeah, everybody loved this first battle card that I authored that took me a week. If I had a tool helping me, I could do 2 or 3 in a week instead of 1. Or if you find yourself in a more established CI function or program that was already stood up, you might find yourself spending a whole lot of time maintaining everything that you built. Like that's the other end of the journey. Once you get everything rolled out, the maintenance problem is what becomes the big time suck and issue for you. And tools can help there as well. And if you can say, hey, I'm killing myself with 80-hour weeks trying to keep everything updated, and it's still not fully updated, right? There's these 5 or 10 assets that I haven't even got to yet. If I had a tool, everything would be up to date all the time. Then that's a pretty compelling case.
We have another question here. It was from earlier. So apologies, Terry. It was a good question and I missed it earlier during the presentation. So I'll get to it now. You were talking about gathering information regarding competitors, their CI tech stack, and the investments they've made in CI. Where Terry's curious where you find that kind of information, or is that maybe a little too much of how the sausage gets made there?
Where we source competitive intel?
The information you're getting on competitors' CI tech stack, I guess, and the investment that your competitors are making in CI, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, logos live on websites. That's an area that you could look at, or through the grapevine. Competitive intelligence professionals were a pretty close bunch, or you may have friends who work in companies that might have insight into that sort of thing.
All right, and we have another one here. Actually, this is a good question. Justin, could you elaborate on what headings or types of battle cards are most helpful with reps or get used the most by reps between like the landmines to lay battle card, where we win, where we lose battle cards? Is there any in particular that really stick out for you?
That's a good question, and another, it depends. I think I'll go back to think about the space that you're in, right? If it's a super crowded space, the more generalized things like swap battle cards or strengths, weaknesses, and like here's the 5 bullets that comprise our competitive narrative against this competitor might not cut it. Like you may have to go a lot deeper and get a lot more tactical and in the weeds, especially if you find yourself in a crowded market. And if you look around and your top competitors, you all kind of do the same thing in slightly different ways, then the devil certainly lies in the details. And your battle card headers will probably change and they'll become a lot more product focused or tactical. But I would encourage everybody to think outside the box and break the mold. And in that, we've all seen battle cards with the typical headings, right? And you can pose the question to your reps, walk over to 5 of your sales reps' desks or Zooms and say, what is this missing? Or like, if you had to design a battle card yourself, thinking back to the past 5 deals that you've competed in recently, what would those headers be? And I would back into it. I think outside in versus inside out is important. Every product marketer knows that if you've gone through any semblance of pragmatic or PMA training. Make sure that you're doing that with your compete program and battle card headers and let them guide you.
Sorry, I just dropped my phone there. This is another good question actually, because you're great to speak to this considering how much the HighSpot's grown and your competitive program is growing. Is how do you fight a scope creep? Sorry, in the sense that you've started small and now you're really increasing scope and adoption as you go. You've tackled that first kind of obstacle of starting to get some buy-in and it's really growing. Like how do you tackle that on your end?
Yes. Yes. As you grow, it becomes more important to not just draw lines in the sand, but cut lines is what I would say. So what we've gotten really good at as a product marketing team as a whole is a lot better at quarterly and annual planning. And, we take a look at our business objectives and then those factor into the plans that we make. And there's some level of flexibility that you'll need to retain. But I think it's important for CI professionals, especially once your program is implemented and operationalized. If you truly want to optimize, you have to get really explicit with every quarter. These are the 2 big projects that we're doing. And here's a handful of tier 2 projects that I would love to get to. Anything outside of this or any inbound request that you get at any time, you need to look at your plan, your quarterly or annual plan, and say, is this going to service one of these items that I've committed to for the quarter or the year? Or is it going to, if I work on this, is it going to do things like speed up my deal cycles or help us compete more effectively in the markets that we're targeting? Or it needs to be tied to some concrete metric or initiative for you to accept it, because it is really easy for you to get overextended, and there is no shortage of inbound requests that will never stop, right? And think of yourself as a switchboard operator, and there's some calls that you just shouldn't take because there isn't going to be enough value to the business, right? Yes, a sales rep who is competing against a tier 3 competitor that you've made no battle card or investment for, to them, that's really important. And, if it's a huge deal that you're trying to win, might be a different story, but otherwise, you need to guard your time, and some stuff just isn't going to make the cut. And that's an expectation that you can work with leadership to set. But also, if you have a really well documented plan that you can point to and say, I would love to do this, but it's not going to help us do anything that's listed in this plan, that makes it easy for you to deflect and maintain your focus.
Okay, we've got couple more minutes here, and we still have so many questions to get to. So we might not get to all of them. We will try our best here. But this one's a little broader, so I guess you could take it where you want. Here is the top 3 metrics to track for your compete program's performance. And you mentioned early, like when you're building that early kind of the business case for your program. I don't know if after that point, when you do get a little bit of buy-in, if the metrics change as you start to kind of build out and your program matures. But yeah, the metrics maybe early on, or you touch on those maybe as you start to mature and establish the competitive program amongst the org.
Yeah, I don't think your North Star metrics don't change. I think you might initially have no way to measure those. And like the top 3 metrics that come to mind for me are 1, win rate, 2, deal cycle times, and 3, sales confidence. And, win rate is the knee-jerk metric that all of us care about. You might start breaking that down beyond just overall to, here's our overall and competitive win rates, but here's our competitive win rate by competitor, by market segment, in industry. Deal cycle times, if you measure those over time. In theory, if you're producing really high quality competitive assets, your deal cycle time should shorten because your reps can compete more effectively against the competition and help buyers arrive at a decision sooner. And then sales confidence could be powered by something as simple as a survey. You can poll your sales team twice a year, 4 times a year if you're starting out, so that you can get a baseline for, wow, like our sales team is not confident selling this particular product of ours, or they are not confident competing in this industry or against this competitor. And then you can measure that over time to see whether or not the assets that you're producing are improving it, but it also helps you focus your investments from the get-go.
That's a really good point there. What else do we have before we get off? And actually, speaking to that win rate as well, I think you mentioned a good point as well, is comparison of your own reps that are using the competitive materials compared to those that aren't, as well as another option as well in terms of that measuring of the win rate to go even more into the weeds a little bit.
Absolutely.
The most common pitfalls when starting or building out your competitive program. I'm not sure if you have some anecdotal examples or maybe something that was like a very tough hurdle for you to climb, or something maybe you've heard obviously in the product marketing community that is a common difficulty. And this will probably be our last question.
I'll say a trap that I've seen, that I have fallen into myself, and I've seen a lot of other folks fall into, is I'll say that remember your sales team are probably the most vocal folks when it comes to how they would love for you to prioritize, your time to service their needs. And there's a lot of validity that comes with that, obviously. I would make sure that, because you'll get tons of inbound requests from sales, whether you're starting out or once you've stood up your program, that those will never stop. But going back to what I said about your plan, I would make sure that you're also consulting your leadership team and looking at your company strategy to make sure that you're triangulating the right prioritization. So, yeah, you may have some squeaky wheels who, are saying that the sky is falling and things are on fire in regards to this one competitor or this one thing that they need. Is that true? And the best way to determine that is to, gut check it with yourself and what you're seeing in the market, but also with your leadership team, or by cross-referencing your company strategy or annual plan. So make sure that you continue to service your internal customers, but recognize that your internal customers go beyond your sales team, and they also include the business as a whole and your post-sale teams. And balance is what all of us strive for. I think tools help with that. Having really good documented plans help with that, and you also being assertive and guarding your time and getting people to respect your cut line that is in service of hitting plan and helping your company execute its strategy are important.
There we go. That was a lot of engagement and a lot of questions, and I'm glad we managed to get to a lot of them there today. To the few people where their questions didn't get answered, we will I'll reach out to you personally afterwards, and we can try and get some of those questions answered if I can get some of Justin's time afterwards, maybe to answer a few of those. But We really appreciate you taking the time here, Justin. I hope this was valuable to everyone in attendance, and I'm sure we'll be doing another one of these at sometime soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. This was great. And thank you, Adam and Clue.
Oh, and housekeeping stuff. I always forget the housekeeping stuff. The recording will be sent. The slides will also be sent, everybody. So if you missed any stuff or didn't manage to take the notes of something that Justin said, it will all be in your inbox. So do not worry about that. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.